Hello and welcome to another After Effects lecture. Tonight we are going over our final assignment, number 10. And that specific assignment is for a graphics package. I'm going to put that graphics package up on the screen real quick so you can see the overview. Here is the overview. I've already read it to the class, so I'm not going to read it again for this tutorial. You can pause this and read it at your will. All right, so we're going to go over a couple things. We're going to go over just kind of how you can set up your project to make it flexible, and we're going to go over how to render in ProRes Quad 4 plus Alpha so that you're getting the right kind of files out for your graphics package. So for this specific graphics package, we have to make 3 compositions, right? So let's go into our overview. We got one that is a 5-second motion logo opening plate. So let's go in and create a composition for that. So I'm going to call this motion logo open underscore 5S for 5 seconds.
That's a mouthful.
And we're gonna make sure that it's 5 seconds long. It's 1920 by 1080 at 24 frames per second, and we're gonna click OK. So we've got our first composition set up. I'm gonna make a new composition, and this one's going to be called lower third. So we're gonna call this L third underscore 7 seconds. And that needs to be 7 seconds long. So we're gonna click OK. We've got our second composition set up. And then we need to do our 10-second end plate. So let's go composition, new composition. Let's do end plate underscore 10s for 10 seconds. And we can go ahead and set up this composition for our end plate. So there we go. We've got the main compositions for all of the different things that we're creating for this graphics package. Let's go ahead and just create a couple other folders that you might use for any kind of additional graphics, like overlays for video or for transitions. So overlays, let's make another one for images that you might use. And then I think that'll be good for now. Let's do another one called logos for the logos that we're going to download from the Hennepin Tech link that is in the description. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a main comps folder, and I'm going to put an asterisk at the front of that so that our comps are in that folder on top of the project. So we can just open that up and we can see all of our main compositions. And then let's go ahead and save this so that we don't lose any work in case of crashes and things like that. AE underscore assignment 10 underscore graphics package. And let's see, I'm just going to do my last name underscore first name underscore A10 for the AEP file and save that. There we go. So we got everything kind of set up and ready to rock and roll. So let's start with just I'm just going to do like a super duper simple lower third. We're going to set it up really fast. I'm going to pull down the logos from the Hennepin Tech site. We're going to set something up that's animated in and out real quick, and we're going to learn how to render to alpha. So let's go ahead and go get those things. So I've already pulled up the Hennepin Tech marketing communications assets thingamajigger right here. So let's go ahead and grab these PNG logos. So I'm going to grab the orange and gray PNG, and I'm going to say save as, and I'm going to bring that into my folder that I created, just right here, and I'm going to make a new folder called logos, and I'm going to create that and put the logos in there. Let's just go get all of them. So I did orange and gray. Oh, that's did I do the horizontal or the vertical one? I don't know. Okay, I did the vertical one. Okay, here we go. Let's get this other PNG and save that out. There we go. And then let's go grab any of the other elements that we might need. Let's grab the PNGs for the Minnesota State colleges logos real quick. Save the images as PNG. And then let's get the other one. Save that as PNG. There we go. So we got all of the stuff now. Let's take a real quick look at this brand guide too, and just see what we got. All right. So primary logo, basic guidelines. Let's just take a peek at that. Oh, interesting. So they use the logo to judge for like spacing and stuff like that. Okay, so here's their colors. So this is another thing you need to pay close attention to when you're creating your project. So they give you all of the numbers for the colors, right? You've got your hex codes right here, which you can put in for the colors that you're going to use for the logo. And then they got their complementary grays too. So you can really quickly grab these hex codes and paste them into the color palette inside of After Effects to create elements that are these colors. So let's kind of keep this up with the screen, or with After Effects. I'm just going to Alt Command Tab back over to After Effects so that I can come back and reference this very easily. So DIN is the font. I don't know if we have DIN on these computers. Do they have a download for it? Okay, so Arial is the alternative font. So Arial you can use on all of your machines. So we'll use Arial to create any of the text that we're creating for our lower third. So Arial Narrow, and Arial Bold are all acceptable fonts for this project. And then logo reproduction. So this kind of tells you how you can use the logos in terms if you want to do like monochromatic setups with them, or if you're using color, etc., etc. And then logos reversed. So this is all acceptable. You can use any of these logo layouts in your lower thirds or your full screen graphics. And I'd recommend you guys kind of play around with some of these looks. It could be interesting to set up a lower third with like this white on orange setup rather than the standard logo. Go ahead, DeAndre.
So we're mostly like making an animated title sequence kind of.
No, you're making a graphics package. You're making an opening plate, a lower third, and an end plate, not a title sequence. Doesn't have anything to do with a title sequence. Title sequence is what you see on the beginning of a, of a show or a movie. Yeah, go ahead. Say again, Daniel. Got to this? It's in the assignment overview on D2L. The link directly to the marketing page is in the assignment overview.
For the vertical for the Minnesota State, it keeps telling me that it was a bad header. I don't know how to import it in After Effects. Will that make
For the PNG?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if that happens when I import it. If it does, I think what you can do is you can just bring it into Photoshop and resave it, and it should work. Okay, so this is the thing that's really important right here, logo integrity. And you're going to see this with any kind of branding that you ever work on. There are certain things that you cannot do with people's logos. And this is specific to every brand I've ever seen. They're going to have certain things that you can and can't do. Like you can't use serif or different fonts. You can't tilt or break apart the logo. You can't reconfigure the elements. You can't change the colors. You can't crop the elements, and you can't italicize or change the shape of the elements. So those are all things you kind of need to stick with, right? Now I have seen it before, like where I've wanted to do something interesting in terms of animating or building the logo that companies have let me get away with. Like I'll take things like do not break up the elements, where I'll animate the elements in one by one to create or build the logo over time. And generally, if you do them in a clean and interesting way, companies are pretty good about accepting what you can do with their logos as long as it doesn't stay on the screen in a broken fashion or look different from their brand guidelines. So that's something you can play with too. Let's see, alternative URL logos. Okay, so it has some, guidelines about how you can use their URL. So this is the par for the course for pretty much working with any type of branding for any company. So take a peek at that. Just make sure you're using the stuff correctly. You probably won't need to worry too much about like law enforcement badges or things like that. Huh. Okay, and then they have the same thing for the Minnesota State branding as well. So just make sure that you're checking that stuff out. Again, they have the colors right there too that you can use, which is good. All right, so I'm going to keep this the colors up here, and I'm just going to set up a really quick lower third with a couple plates. I'm kind of going to take use inspiration from what I created for that Walk to End Hunger spot with like the kind of nicely tiled white with some accentuation colors underneath it and back, and then we'll plop the HTC logo on there and some lorem ipsum style text that we could change if we wanted to. For a lower third, we'll set up a really quick animation, and then we'll dump it out. All right, so let's see. Yes, DeAndre.
Which part are we in?
1080p comp, it is ready to have a lower third created. So right away what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of set up the backbone of my lower third, which is the elements on the bottom that create the lower third. And like I said, I'm going to kind of utilize some of the colors that we have here and some of the design language that I used in my Walk to End Hunger spot. So let's pull that up real quick one more time. We don't need to read this whole thing. Let me just find this lower third. There it is right there. Okay, so you can see, so this is kind of what I'm going to do. I'm going to do kind of something similar to this. So I'm going to create a couple of solid layers in the Hennepin Tech colors. I'm going to put them in 3D space so that I can kind of shoot them with a camera and add a little bit of movement to them. And then we'll plop some text on there with the HTC logo, and we'll call it good. So here we go. Let's go ahead and let's just start with white. HTC has got white as part of its logo, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some shape layers with white. So I've got my pen tool. I'm going to set the fill to white. I'm going to turn the stroke off, and I'm just going to create some simple angled elements that I can use to animate my logo. So there's one. And then the other thing that I often will do when I'm creating graphics and things like that is I'll take the shapes that I've already created and duplicate them. So I'm going to duplicate this, and all I'm going to do here is pull this one underneath and change the color of it. So I'm going to change this color to one of those approved branding colors here. Let's go with this the hex code on this gray right here. So we've got AAAAA is the hex code. So if you want to use hex codes, here's how you do it. You just copy this right here. We go into the base shape, the fill, and then we type that hex code in right here, and that gives you the proper color. And then I'm just gonna raise that layer up a little bit, and I'm gonna make all this stuff in 3D space. And I'm gonna push this layer back a little bit in 3D space. So I'm gonna set this back, say like 150 pixels, and just kind of space it so that it'll work as a nice little element. There we go. I think the other thing that I did with those elements when I was working on the Walk to End Hunger spot is I add a little bit of a blur to them. So I'm going to go into blur. Let's see what we got. Fast blur will work fine, so I'm going to dump a fast blur on this thing, and I'm just going to blur it out like 20 pixels. So it just has a nice soft edge to it and looks attractive. There we go. So we already got some base shapes going in and going on the timeline. Let's do a couple more. I'm going to call these base shapes left. I'm just going to add an L to these, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate these again. So I'm going to duplicate these again, and then all I'm going to do here is flip them around. So I'm going to go move these up, rename them so that they're right. And there we go. So we've got our right shapes, and then what I'm going to do with these is I'm just going to go into the scale. I'm going to unlock the scales here, and I'm going to flip them. Right? So they're going to flip around just like so. I'm going to flip them like that, and then I'm going to squish them a little bit. But I got to do that independently. So I'm just kind of changing the shape a little bit. 72%. And all right, those are looking good. Let's go ahead and move these down a little bit so that they're sitting on the composition properly. So I'm just using position to do that. On solo here, and we can see everything. Great, okay, cool. So this is looking pretty good so far. The next thing I'm gonna do is with this top layer, I'm gonna add a little drop shadow to it. So a little drop shadow, plop that on this top one. I'm gonna flip it around so that it plays it plays basically above what we're looking at here. I'm going to soften it up. So it just adds a little bit of a break there between my different pieces. And I'm going to play around with the positioning on this stuff just a little bit. To kind of give it some, give it a little bit of visual interest, utilizing my thirds. I like that kind of like corner falling right there on that third. And then we can play with the opacities of these drop shadows just to keep it really nice and subtle and clean. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this second base shape that I have in the background, and we're going to use a different color. So I'm going to go into my reference again, and let's take this second gray color right here. 646464 is the hex code. I'm going to copy that hex code and then go in here and paste it and utilize that for my second shape color. And this is kind of what it looks like over alpha thus far. Nice and clean, has some good lines to it. Let's find a way to integrate the orange into this to give it a little bit of a color pop, right? So I think what I'm going to do with that is I'm just going to create a shape layer with that orange color. Copy that, come over here, and I'm just going to do like a long and thin shape line, like so. 1 second, DeAndre. Click OK, and now I've got this nice line element that I can throw in. So what I would probably do here is go like orange line, oranger line, make sure it's in 3D space. This I'm actually going to pull forward by like 50 pixels, so I'm going to go minus 50, so it's coming towards the camera a little bit, and it'll give it a little bit of nice motion when I start moving the camera around. And I'm going to give it some rotation on the Z-axis to kind of match what I have going on with my other elements. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of place it in here in the corners as a nice subtle little pop of color on the lower third. I'm going to take that orange line again and duplicate it and kind of tilt it the other direction. And let's make this kind of like a secondary orange line that can go underneath the two top shapes that we have here. So I'm going to kind of put this with the left hand base shape, and we're going to move this around a little bit. I think what I might do is go and put this, I'm going to kind of match the angle of this line we have going on back here, and I'm going to also move it back in Z space a little bit so that it falls in behind those layers. Let's put it at 0. There we go. And I'm also going to thin this up a little bit. So I'm going to go into the shape itself. And let's see, let's go into the contents, rectangle. The path is right here. We've got scale on it. I'm just going to make this a nice thin line, like 5 pixels. And we need to make sure that we unlock the scales. There we go. So we got a nice thin orange line, a nice pop of color, and all this stuff is on brand as it stands right now. Okay, cool. So we have a nice base for our lower third. Let's go ahead and add our logo in now. So I'm going to go ahead and grab our Hennepin Tech logo, and we're going to import that into the project. So I'm going to select the logo folder and click Command I for import. And I'm going to go to my logos that I just downloaded, and we're going to find this Hennepin Tech logo to use on our lower third. Let's go ahead and click OK and dump this onto our screen. So I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm not a big fan of Hennepin Tech's logo. I think it's kind of awkward and funny looking. And it makes kind of doing lower thirds a little bit difficult. If I had my way, what I would do here is I would just use the H. So I'm going to mask out the H, and I'm going to move it over to the left-hand side. And I also want to be able to separate it a little bit from the background. And I also have to watch out for title action safe. So let's make sure we're watching out for that. There we go. Let's do just a really, really subtle drop shadow on it. Just to separate it from the background a little bit. There we go. Nice and subtle. Cool. Looking pretty good. Maybe scale this down a little bit. It's kind of bulky. Make sure we're title action safe. Pretty good right there. Okay, cool. So we have the HTC logo. It's in there. We've got some nice color. We've got some layers. It's all set up in 3D space. I'm going to take this, the Hennepin Tech logo, and I'm going to pull this forward a little bit too. So I'm going to go minus 75 pixels on this, move it into the foreground just a little bit, and adjust kind of where it's sitting. And then let's go ahead and add a camera to this basic setup. And then we can start animating. So I've got my camera. I'm gonna go 50 millimeter camera, click OK. I believe it's a 2-node. Yes, it is. Good. I want a 2-node because I don't want the camera to pan or anything like that. I want it to actually curve around the elements that I have built in here right now to kind of create a nice look. Okay, so let's just do a really simple camera move on this. I'm going to have the camera moving subtly the whole time. I'm going to go into transform, and I'm just going to do a very, very simple position change, just so we get some subtle movement on the lower third as it's playing out for the full 10 seconds. So I got my position keyframe set at 0. I'm going to scoot over to 10 seconds, and I'm just going to have this thing kind of arc around the logo, just creating some nice subtle motion for all of the 3D elements. Cool. Text. Let's add some text real quick. So Arial is the font that we can use. I'm going to use black for my text so it stands out on the white. And we can use Arial regular. And I'm going to go all caps because I think it'll pop better. I'm just going to put my name in for now. We'll scale that down so it actually fits. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reset the characters so that all the spacing and kerning and everything like that is all correct. So with the lower third, you could do a number of things depending on what information you're conveying. Like you could say something like put your info here on the text, whatever you want to do. Let's make it 3D, and let's move this forward so that it sits at the same kind of like 3-dimensional plane as the HTC logo does. So that was minus 75 pixels. So I'm going to put minus 75 in. That'll pull the text forward just a little bit and make it nice and readable. Let's see. I want to find a nice spot for this. Kind of feeling over here. I'm also not sure that that upper orange line's working the way I'd like it to work. I think I'm going to change my mind on this text. I'm going to go white with it and do a drop shadow. So let's go white and then add a drop shadow in. And now it kind of pops. I'm going to make the opacity on the drop shadow 100% and just soften it up just a little bit so that it'll stand out over alpha and everything else. All right. Still not 100% on the text, but we're going to keep cruising. All right, so we have one set of text. The other thing that I'll often do when I'm creating lower thirds is create like a subtext. So like if we were doing a title for somebody, we might put that title either above or below the name of the person. So I'm going to take my name, duplicate it, and we'll just move it up. And let's use one of the other font types that we can use without problem. Let's see, where were those fonts? Is that up above? Okay, here we go. So Arial Narrow is what we can use. So let's set this font to, I thought we were in Arial. Arial Narrow. I'm going to make this a lot smaller. And I'm going to change the distances on the drop shadow so it's not quite so crazy looking. Okay. All right. So let's just call this title here. And instead of doing all caps on that, I'm going to make it all just kind of standard text. So capitalized like so. We'll add the title here and kind of move it into position. Whoa, hey now. There we go. All right, so we basically have a layout of our lower third. And at this point, what you would want to do is like set up all your animation, all this stuff, animate your pieces in and out, maybe have the lines fly in, give it some motion blur, whatever you're going to do for creating your animated ins and outs. But let's skip to how you're going to render this stuff. So here's how rendering would go. Same thing we always do. We're going to send this to the render queue, and then we're going to go into where it says best settings. And we're going to make sure this is all set up, and it is 1920 by 1080. Cool. We go into lossless, QuickTime, format options. ProRes 4444 is what we are rendering as. Click OK. And then we're doing channel RGB plus alpha. That will give you the alpha channel so that you can take this lower third and dump it right over the top of video in Premiere Pro, and it will work with no problem. This is important right here where it says color pre-multiplied or matted. We want to do this as straight, unmatted. So the alpha channel is going to be part of the video, and you won't have to worry about bringing an alpha channel layer in with a lower third layer underneath it or over the top of it or whatever to make it work. We don't have audio, so let's not export audio. That'll save you from having an audio track dump onto your Premiere timeline, possibly getting in front of other audio tracks that you might have, and it just saves the editor another step. So we shut off the audio, we click OK, and then we go into our output options. Let's make a new folder called exports for our export, and then we will name this. Let's do this. Let's do it like, this is our lower third, so let's go L third underscore HTC GFX underscore last name underscore first name underscore A10. And now it's properly named for your assignment. And we click OK, and we render this bad boy. Go for it.
While rendering, and I know you've changed it in the settings to alpha channel, does this still in After Effects have to be set?
It does not. As long as you don't have anything back there, you can be looking at the black background, and it will still render the alpha channel correctly. One other step that I like to do while I'm working on lower thirds and graphics and things like that is just test it over video. Like throw a chunk of video underneath it, make sure it looks good, make sure it's readable. I would probably work this text a lot longer than I have just to make it look nicer and more readable. I would probably use the DIN font instead of Arial. All those steps I would take. All right, so we have now exported our first lower third. And let's just go ahead and navigate to that real quick. Yeah, it took us all of like 20 minutes to make a lower third. You guys can totally knock this out in 4 hours. Shouldn't be that tough.
4 hours, okay.
4 hours. All right, so let's go in and see what our file sizes are looking like. So 59 megabytes, not terrible. It's 5 seconds long, 59 megs. Now this is something that you can pull in, drop on a timeline, and use and rock and roll with it. The other thing that you could probably do here is save out the After Effects project. So if they had multiple names that they were going to use for their lower thirds, you could save out the After Effects project, and then they could go in and they could change the text and make it whatever they wanted, so that they can fine-tune the graphics for a specific project or person or whatever. All right. Does anybody have any questions?
No, this is pretty sweet. Basically, we're going to be making graphics that people are going on the website to find what makes this more valuable.
Right, absolutely. Harry, did you have a question?
I do.
Shoot.
Where do we need to put? Where do you like the Minnesota State logo? Like,
I'm going to leave that up to you. If you want to use it, you can. You don't have to. If I were to use it, what I would probably do is I would use it on the end plate, the longest thing that you have, right? It's 10 seconds long. I would probably create like a nice, HTC animated, end plate that has the Hennepin Tech logo nice and big, maybe with one of their like mission statement things underneath it, with some room for additional text, like if they're doing an event or something like that. Maybe you have a date and a time or a URL or whatever, and then maybe you flash transition that over to the Minnesota State colleges and universities for the last 4 seconds of the end plate and transition it out. So I'm going to leave that up to you guys. If you guys want to utilize that stuff and bring it to play in your project, you are absolutely welcome to do so. Go ahead, Adam.
Are we creating like a fictional event for this?
Sure. If you can create a fictional event if you want to. The other thing you could do is you could say title here, event name here, date here, whatever you want. Like if it's a fake date, you could put 99/99/19, whatever, right? So you could make it look like it's something that people can go in and edit to make their own. Go ahead, Connor.
So I wanted to use the fonts that like they use for their logo.
Yep.
But I couldn't find the exact font.
Din is the name of the font. I have
Found one that's very, very similar.
I have Din at home. I'll zip it and make it available to you guys via the link on the assignment.
Okay, because I found a DIN knuckle script. It's just slightly different than the one they have.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to use it, you can. And Arial is totally acceptable as well, so use Arial if you want to. Riley, question?
Are we allowed to go outside of the Hennepin logo for this assignment, or do you want us just to stay with the Hennepin logo?
It's got to be Hennepin Tech.
Gotta be.
Yep, I want you to treat this like a client project, right? Like you are creating graphics for the school. So it needs to be legit. And if I were doing it legit, that means I would have to come in here and not mask this logo and make it work with my lower third better than it does right now. So I would have to come in here and unmask this and actually use
Oh.
I have an idea.
this gigantic freaking logo.
Yeah.
Shrink it down.
Shrink it down.
I shrinked it.
Yeah, shrink it, but if you shrink it, it's like,
Well, don't shrink it too much.
Right about there.
it gets a little ridiculous.
Mostly.
I would probably have to do something like this. If I were to set this up, this is probably something that I would do right here.
I would go with horizontal version of it.
You could use horizontal too. Play with it. Play with these, you guys. You could even do multiple versions. Like, oh, I like this version. I'm gonna go in and change the color combination and find something different, and export that and see what Todd thinks. So
Titles of.
as you can go ahead, Riley.
I was just telling DeAndre what's the difference between that and a horizontal.
What, this and horizontal?
Yes. That's vertical.
Well, the horizontal has the text going out this direction.
Yes, because it's on a line going that way.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of their logo. It's kind of like the spacing on it is funky,
It's too big.
especially if you want to do any kind of lower third work with it.
And you cannot change the scale.
You can't. No, you can't take the text and change the scale of the text.
Gosh, I wish you could though.
I know, right? Okay. All right. Does anybody have any further questions on anything? Okay.
Listening, but I'm gonna forget.
There was a time where I never screen recorded anything, you guys. And my students still passed the class. Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing.
Your faith in my mental capacity to retain things is astounding.
That scares me.
Exactly.
That scares me for your futures.
I had trouble remembering your name. Okay.
Scares me for your futures. Okay, so I'm gonna type in lookbook_ref_doc so that I can go in there and I can reference all the images that I'm working with. There we go. So I've got my document right here and I can work inside of Safari and find stuff that I think is cool and interesting. All right, so that's an interesting shot. Let's see, let's grab just a couple more here. Ooh, this is kind of fun. Let's see what this is all about. See if I'm interested in this. The color, I thought the colors were interesting straight away.
Have you seen Isle of Dogs?
No.
It's stop motion.
Okay, so this is kind of cool, actually. This could be interesting for using some sort of like 3D lighting effects inside of After Effects, right? So maybe instead of just doing simple drop shadows and things like that, you create like really nice animated lights that bring, you know, shed light on certain parts of the lower third or the graphics, right? Or use shadows and lights. So this is, let's say, I love this. I want to reference this as 3D lights, and maybe that's what I'll do and incorporate into my package. Okay, so I take that still, come back over here on the desktop. Where is my screenshot? There it is. Okay, so I'm going to call this image 2. I'm going to go ahead and drop that in there. I'm going to go back over to my document, and I'm going to type in image 02. I'm going to grab, I'm going to say, what is it? It's Isle of Dogs. Isle of Dogs, URL, underscore this. We'll go grab the URL from art of the title. Paste that into our text document. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a note down here at the bottom. Really like the use of spotlights here. Could work to help make the logo and text elements pop. Right? Just something to myself so that I know what the hell I was thinking about when I was actually doing my lookbook, right, for later. There we go. Cool. I'm going to grab one more, and then I'm going to create a PDF out of this. Okay. So we've got Isle of Dogs, and let's go back and check out a couple more things here and see if there's anything fun that we can look at. I love this series, so we'll watch a little bit of this open, see if there's anything in here we can glean. Okay, so the text animation here is kind of cool. You got these, like, you know, vertical, horizontal line things going on to kind of bring the text in. It's kind of interesting. And then I like the way that they've also kind of arranged their text. Let's look a little further and see if there's anything else interesting in here. So this is kind of cool. We've got these like, I like these like out of focus vertical lines that they kind of use right here. This is kind of cool. So this could be something that you could use for, say, your lower third coming on the screen. Maybe you'll use some orange vertical lines that kind of flash really quickly, and then your logo comes on the screen very quickly after that, right? So part of the intro animation for your logo or your lower third. That way, when people are gonna see some information come up on the screen, that's kind of like a visual cue that says, "Hey, you're about to see something you need to read." Right? So that could be something that works. So let's go ahead and steal this too. Go ahead and grab a screenshot. And we'll run through the same process where we take the screenshot. We'll call this image 03. We'll dump it in our lookbook, and then we'll go in here to our ref doc and make a couple notes. Image 03. Altered carbon URL. Let's grab our URL real quick, paste that in, and then make a note. Love the vertical lines that accompany the text before it comes on screen. Might use this at the front of the lower third to indicate its incoming animation. Something like that, right? Okay, so you've gone through the whole process. You've gathered a bunch of images. You've made a bunch of notes. You've got your lookbook doc kind of written up. Let's go ahead and create a PDF out of this thing. So the way that I would probably do this is there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can just take your images and make them a PDF. And I would like you to do this, I would like you to kind of integrate your notes into this as well. So if it were me, this is what I would do. I would go into Photoshop. And I'm just going to create a really clean, nice little design for this, for the lookbook. Like if I was going to give this to a client in terms of like where my inspiration's coming from, we want this to look nice and read nice and be usable. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go new. I'm going to make, I'm going to go with a square composition. So I'm just going to go like 1000 by 1000 pixels. 72 DPI, that's fine. So we got a nice square composition. Let's go ahead and add Hennepin Text logo to this so that it looks nice. Sure. Go ahead and put that in there. We'll move this to the top. Transform it a little bit. Okay, I like that you have to hold shift now to make it not be stupid. Kind of center it up. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of create a spot for my text. So I'm going to kind of just create a square. And I'm going to kind of center this. I'm going to fill it with white. And then I'm going to add a drop shadow to it. And we'll bring up the opacity a little bit, change its rendering so that we get a little bit of drop shadow on it. Looks pretty nice. There we go. We can deselect. And I might even go ahead and I really want this to like have a stroke around the outside of it. So I'm going to take this layer and duplicate it. And then I'm going to go into the drop shadow and just reverse it. And make its opacity really light. And I don't want to use global light. I want this to be subtle too. I just want to kind of create a nice, clean looking outline on this box so it pops a little bit. Kind of like that. There we go. Nice. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and create one more layer underneath, and I'm going to grab one of the Hennepin Tech approved colors. Where were we? Here we go. Let's take this nice light gray, the hex code ease, and I'm going to go grab that color. And I'm going to dump it onto this layer in the background just to set it off from the white that I have in the front. There we go. Now we have a nice clean page which we can place all of our information in. So let's go ahead and set this up and kind of create some pages. So the other thing I'm going to do here real quick is I'm going to go ahead and group these. So I'm going to go new group from layers, and we're going to call this HTC page back. Click OK. Now that's in a folder, and I can put stuff on top of it. I can create multiple layers, and then I can start saving out versions of this to put into a book, right? So let's go ahead and do that. First thing I want to do is I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call this image 1 to correspond with my lookbook. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to dump our assets into that. Lookbook, image 1. Let's go ahead and drop that on here. Let's scale that down a little bit. Place it within our box. Make sure it goes into the folder that we're using. There we go. And then let's go ahead and create a text box for this too. I'm going to use black text on white, and I'm just going to make a nice decent sized text box. We're going to use approved fonts. So let's go ahead and set this so that it's set to Arial. And then let's go ahead and grab our image 1 information and put it in that text box.
Oh, this is how we're making our thing.
This is how you can make it. You can ultimately do whatever you like, but when you're working for clients and they're paying you a lot of money, having things look clean and readable is a huge plus. If a client looks at this, you show this to a client, they're going to know, number one, you give a shit because you took the time to actually make this for them. And number two, they're going to know that you have a quality eye for design. No, it's branded, it uses their colors, it uses their fonts, it's got good information in terms of your thought process as to why you're using these images and for what, right? And that goes a long way. That also goes a long way in terms of getting hired. Like if you do something like this for a company when you're trying to get hired as part of your resume or your cover letter, this goes a long way. Like if you put thought into this kind of stuff, this is the stuff that sets you apart from everybody else in the pack. One of my former bosses, whenever he applies for a job, he creates a book for their branding. Like sends them a bound paper printed book that goes with his resume and his cover letter. The guy has never not gotten a job because he's the only one that does that stuff. It shows everybody who's looking at you that you care and that you have an eye for design. Okay, so there's image 1, right? So we've got image 1 done. Now what we can do is we can just keep creating our folders. Image 2. Let's put our assets in there. We can shut off image 1 and go ahead and, well, actually, let's do this. Since we've already got image 1 all set up, let's just duplicate that layer and we'll swap out the asset. So we'll go duplicate group. We'll call it image 2. That way we've already got our text laid out and we've got our image laid out. So I can just delete the image and then, well, actually, let's do this. Let's make sure it goes in pretty much the same place. So I'll bring in the next image, image 2. There we go. Drop that in there. Let's scale it down and kind of like fit it in real close in terms of size to where our previous image was. So things are consistent. There we go. Now I can get rid of image 1. Throw that in the trash, and we'll shut off the lower image 01. All right, and then we can go in and we can copy and paste across our lookbook text that we created here. Copy this, come in here, select the text, paste the new text in. Let's add a carriage return here, and then just adjust our font size a little bit so that this all works. Great. Cool, image 2 is done. Now we rinse and repeat. Okay, let's go ahead and duplicate the group. Let's call this image 03. Click OK. Shut off 2. Right away, since we're already in this mode, I'm going to go ahead and copy the data from my lookbook reference and paste it in here. That looks great. And then let's just bring in the proper image. Scale it up so that it kind of fits and goes in a similar position. We can go ahead and get rid of the image 2 file. And now we have 3 nice pages, right? You guys ever, who's taken Photoshop? Pretty much everybody, right?
No, not.
You guys know how to use Actions? Okay, Actions is perfect for exporting this stuff, right? So now what we want to do is we want to make an actual PDF for these pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up an action that I can just push the play button on. It'll save all these out with the proper names, and then we can PDF it. So let's go into Actions. Wherever that is. There it is, right there. So Actions. You watching, DeAndre? All right. So we're going to make a new action. I'm going to call this Save Lookbook. Click OK. I'm going to make a new action to go in that folder. And we're just going to call this Save JPEG. I'm going to hit record, and then we're going to just save these things out. So we're going to go File, Save As. Let's go ahead and get to our lookbook location. There it is. I'm going to make a new folder called Pages. Click Create, and we're going to save this out as a JPEG. And we'll call this lookbook01.jpg and click Save. And we'll go level 10, and then we'll close it. Oh, wait, cancel that. Oh, I don't want to, I'm in photo mode. Sorry, my bad. All right, so let's go ahead and hit stop there. So then all we should have to do is click the visibility layers and push play. And did it overwrite it? I bet it overwrote it. Yeah, it overwrote it. Boo. I don't know. So those of you who've taken Photoshop class, is there a way that we can make it not overwrite the file when we do an action?
I remember this now. Don't remember it enough to know what to do with that.
Because in the past, what it would do is if you were using the same name, is it would prompt you to add a new name to it instead of just saving over what you've already created. I use that for my photo work, so I'll just save them out then. We'll skip the whole after. Do you know, Pete?
Well, can't you save them as 3 different ones and then combine files and add Acrobat?
That's exactly what we would do. Yep. Okay, so let's see. We've now got in our pages, we've got lookbook 01. I'm just going to change this to 2. And then we'll go ahead and do that for, I'll run the action for the first page because that will give me the right name. And then for the third page, I'll just do a save as. Save as lookbook3.jpg and click save. Click OK, and there we go. We've got all of our pages built. I'm going to go ahead and save this lookbook PSD as well, so that we can go back and add or subtract or create more or whatever we want to do. And now we got our pages made. Sweet. Okay, let's make a PDF. So now we go into Acrobat, just as Pete suggested. Adobe Acrobat. And what we are going to do is combine files into a new PDF. So I'm going to say Add Files. We're going to go into our Pages folder, and we're going to select our 3 JPEGs and click Add Files and say Combine. And then it creates a beautiful 3-page document for us with our different looks and notes on them. Do you have to go this far? No. Does it look good? Absolutely. Take it as far as you like, but that's basically how this goes. And then when we want to create the PDF, we just say create PDF. Oh, sorry, we don't even do that. We just go File, Export, or Save As. And then, let's see, I want to choose a different folder. I just want this to go into my lookbook folder top, and then I'm going to name this with the proper naming conventions. So what are those naming conventions? Let's go back to our overview and double check that. Here it is right here, HTC Lookbook, first and last name. I'm just going to go ahead and copy that, come back over here, paste it, and then I'm going to add my last name and my first name and click. See, there's an extra PDF there. Click Save. And that's ready to turn in, and it looks awesome. And I will go, damn, that person went the extra mile. How nice. Okay, so there it is. That's how you make the PDF. And then the nice thing about that is once that's all finished, you should be able to like open this PDF with preview, and it'll give you the whole, why did it open that? Okay, preview, open. Why did it not open what I wanted to open? There we go. And then you've got your pages all laid out. If you go full screen, everything looks nice, has a nice design to it, and you can see all the pages. Works great. There we go. That's how to make the PDF. You can do this much simpler if you want to. You don't have to go through all that rigmarole and make it all cool. All right. Any other questions?
Why do I suck at lower thirds?
I don't know. Get good.
So bad.
Get her done.
The only thing I can think of is a fucking square and it looks like shit. on my brain.
Have you looked at any references yet?
I've been doing nothing but, man.
All right. Well, we'll work on it.
This